Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mental Health Warriors. I'm your host for this evening, Caroline Murphy Bennis, the Rainbow Warrior. And I have an amazing guest for you this evening, Lisa Jayne, and she'll be back with you in just a second. Welcome back, everyone, to Words as Medicine. And I'm so thrilled to be joined with Lisa Jayne, all the way from Sydney, Australia, for tonight's show. And we're going to be looking at the word mothering as our word for this evening, and it's mothering as medicine. So I'd love to, just to say hello, Lisa, first to our mental health warrior team and everybody's watching from all around the world because we have a huge following on this show, and I'm so thrilled to bring you and let everybody get to know Lisa.
Yeah, hello, I'm here. This is me, and it's great to be here. Thanks, Carolyn. Hello, everyone. Beautiful to be involved in this discussion. Really thrilled.
Great. And Lisa is actually an emotion education, I would say she's a cutting edge emotion educator, and something really, really essential for these times. She's a speaker, she's an author, she's really inspirational lady who is a leader, I think, on the cutting edge really of I suppose our mental health as well, Lisa, because really underneath mental health is there's a lot of emotional kind of issues that we haven't had that education up to this point. So it really is something that I suppose some of us we kind of can shy away from, and we can find it very difficult to face those really heavy, difficult emotions. And I just wondered what got you involved in this kind of area. It's something that's, I suppose, it's new enough to this space, the wellness space as such.
Yes, yeah,
It's emergent.
yeah, yeah. It's really interesting because, I've always been interested in sort of helping people, and I was always like, even as a kid at school, I was always like the wise one. Like my friends would sort of come to me with their issues, and so I always had that, and I was always watching and reflecting and trying to learn, and I noticed, like, I have 4 children, and I have 3 older children and then a 15-year-old. And with my older children, life was pretty hectic, and I was always sort of trying to understand why they did what they did. And I could, like, I did a whole lot of workshops and a whole lot of research, and I found that I could never find a full term solution. And my journey sort of took me from, being married with 3 children, and then I became a teacher. So I actually was an economics, did an economics degree, and I was a business analyst early in life. And then, this is an interesting story. I left the city at 21, moved into a country town where there was no jobs for business analysts. So I became the local piano teacher and the local aerobics instructor, and I started a land care group, right? Because,
Wow.
and that was my making, because I didn't even realize that I had that sort of strength in me. So I'd moved
Yeah.
out, and I just felt really bad about myself because I wasn't earning any money. And I lived in this country town in Australia. And, like, if anyone's been to Australia, once you get over the mountains on the east coast, you get over the mountains, it's just flat. So you drive for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours into the middle of Australia. And I was one of those little country towns that was like a bump in the road, and there's 500 people that live there. So
I'm curious. Oh
it
my
was the
God.
most incredible experience for me.
Wow.
Um, and I just didn't realize that I could do those things.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, it really did build my character in a way.
Yeah.
And all of that time, like, just going from that, trying to make something of my life, having kids, trying to fix the kids, and then in my 30s going into teaching, and finding that when I was working with kids, there was just there was just no understanding, no emotional support for these kids. Like, we were all about teaching them information, information,
Mm.
information, information, and kids would be really naughty, and I would just be like, I'd feel them. I'd be just, oh, he's so cute, you know, like, and I'd really resonate with the naughty kids, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'd sort of, well, naughty kids, that's a terrible thing to say, but I, you know, because I had two of my own, two little boys that would have been called, you know,
Yeah,
naughty
yeah.
kids. I really could resonate with them, and you know, and I thought, as soon as you gave them your attention, as soon as you sat with them, as soon as you
Mm.
connected with them, these
Yeah,
kids were just like, they were yours, you know,
yeah.
and that to me was something that I must have intuitively did
Mm.
without understanding. And, you know, and I did on my 30s. I was really in my 30s just trying so hard to understand how we can teach kids about emotion.
Mm.
And what I started to see was we're a really clever society. We know so much information about so many things. You know, we can go on to Google, we can find anything out. And we also went through this spiritual development, right? So there's been this new age movement where
Mhm.
there's been a lot of understanding about energy and you know, all this other stuff. So we have all this stuff,
Mhm.
and yet society is sicker than ever.
Yeah,
Why is that, right? And this was my question, why is that?
yeah.
And that was my, like, why is that? I wanna know why that
That was
is. And I,
your research research question.
yeah,
Yeah?
that was my research question, because 'cause I'm just like,
Yeah,
okay, we've got this stuff. We know
yeah.
this stuff. We know our trauma. I know what happened to me as a child, and I know my childhood wound. I know that. And yet, why am I still in this dynamic? Why am I still choosing relationships like that? You know,
Yeah.
why are we still feeling the inner conflict? You know, and
Mm.
for me, that was the thing, like, there's a piece missing. Like, I just
Yes.
knew there was a piece missing.
Oh my
And
God,
maybe
yeah,
that was
yeah.
my
I
calling,
know that
right? That was,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely my calling, because all the pieces have just fallen into place for me. I was given the experiences, the people, the opportunities
Yeah.
to see that, you know, and I like to say that our culture, in our cultures, most Western cultures especially, there's a gap between the way we feel and our culture.
Mm.
So we are culturally taught to suppress,
Yeah,
resist, you know, deny, medicate.
yeah.
Um, we are not taught to integrate everything that's happening to us. Now, if I have a feeling, that is how most animals and species on this
Mm.
planet, they survive and adapt through their feeling response to their
Mm.
environment. The
Yeah,
only thing that doesn't do that is a human being. We have a feeling response and we go, holy shit, I don't want to feel that. Shut it down. We
yeah,
don't go, oh, this is teaching me something.
yeah.
I've got to learn from this so that I can adapt. We don't think like that because our culture keeps us separated from that.
Mm.
Now, the bigger story is that when we're separated from that, we're separated from our heart. And when we're separated
Mm.
from our heart, we're not in our power. When we're
Mm.
not in our power, we're very easily sold insurance to. We're very easily, you know,
Manipulated.
manipulated to buy and to spend and to be whatever it is that this corporate culture
Mm.
wants of
Mhm.
us. You know, so this is the formation of where we're at right now. So
Yeah,
for me, the understanding and the bridging of emotion and culture and bringing
yeah.
that back in, that is our power. Our emotions are our, you know, the life force that runs through us,
Mm.
and it
Mhm.
really is where I found my true power. And so I think it's underneath everything. If we're not integrated emotionally, we do
Mm.
have mental health problems. We have, you know, like, there's just
Mm.
so many things that
Mm.
happen as a result of the split
Yeah.
inside of us.
Yeah, I absolutely love all that because actually there's a couple of things that are kind of synchronized with my experience as well of kind of that research question. And I know I've talked about on these shows and you know yourself that I've kind of gone into I went into that retreat time and I had that
Mm,
calling. But actually what was behind that was like I was brought in into this research question of trying to solve the the societal problems, you know. And I suppose I
mm,
was kind of coming from a different point of view, where from a kind of like a creative point of view, where I was looking at the creative force of life itself, and like how that is, you know, expressed in the world, but how is there, yeah, again, a disconnect from, so there's like we're living in this unconscious culture. I realize then that
Mm.
like our systems of thought that are set up in our culture are absolutely in conflict with the true knowing, innate knowing that we have in
Mm.
ourselves. And the
Mm.
innate knowing comes from our emotions, doesn't it? You
Yes, it
know,
does.
it comes from that emotional connection that we can build authentically with people and with situations, and with knowing what we really want, knowing what resonates with us, knowing what feels good naturally to ourselves. So it's kind
Mm.
of then I
Mm.
realized like it's about going back to our true nature, coming back into our essence identity, and
Mm.
is our true identity. But that's a feeling, it's a feeling of our own kind of
Yeah,
aliveness, you
yeah,
know
yeah,
and
yeah.
then
It's so
that
true.
can only be sensed in the body, but we kind of tend to be disconnected from our body because we're afraid of our emotions.
Mm.
So it's a
Yeah.
kind of journey back. And was that something that you kind of had to explore as well, like the journey back into the body and the feeling of the body, so that
Mm.
you can sense your
Yeah,
emotions? Because
yeah.
there is that numbness there, isn't there?
To absolutely numbness, and that's a good way to describe it. But also, I think what happens is when we have trauma or we have an emotional experience, we shut it down into our body and it becomes like a frozen part of us. So, and it's not
Mm,
operating. And because it's not operating, we can't see,
mm,
So, for example, and this is a very confrontational example perhaps, but if you've had sexual abuse, for example, like I know of a woman that had sexual abuse, and that's an area in her that was so painful, like
mm.
her natural response was to shut that down.
Yeah.
It may be hard for her to actually see situations where she could get into trouble again, because
Mm,
the emotional world is not operating in that place because it's all shut down. So it's
okay.
almost like we have these emotions trapped in our body
Mm,
that that form these little areas where we can't see clearly. We don't know what's going
mm,
on. We can't see it. We have no awareness because we're
mm,
completely shut down in that space. And for me, when I was 37, I had an experience like an awakening, really. And I
mhm,
started to realize that I knew so much. Like I was this intelligent woman that had had all these experiences, and I'd learned all this stuff I'd learnt about emotion, right? I
yeah,
had learnt about it.
yeah,
I knew it. I had the information, but you know what? A
yeah,
thinking is not a feeling.
yeah.
And at 37, I realized that even though I cried and I considered myself emotional,
Mm,
I couldn't even find my true feeling. I
mm,
had to start really going, oh, where is that? Like it was almost like there was this numbness from like
mm,
here down, like
yeah,
I was operating up here all the time. And
mm,
think about it, right? When you're operating in your head, how big is your world? Your world is
yeah,
this big. When
yeah,
you're operating from your feelings and your heart,
yeah.
your world is like
Massive.
infinite,
Yeah,
infinite, right? That and
yeah,
that you can feel that when you
yeah.
start to get out of your head. And and for me, it was like this. I actually had to stop and start to really feel like what is really going on. I want to have a go at my partner. I'm feeling resentful. Okay, that's a red flag for
Mm,
me to look at me. And
yeah,
it's like, okay, what is really going on? Where am I feeling that in my body? What is that
mm,
about? Oh, is that resentment or is that? And I
mm,
actually had to really learn to feel,
yeah.
because I'd thought my feelings all of my life. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I had to be helped to find a feeling, right? It
Yeah.
was just like so
It's
so
amazing.
funny. I know it is so funny. It was like this, but that's how we're raised,
That's
like,
it. That's
and
our
it's not
culture.
our fault. That's the
Yeah,
culture. The
yeah.
culture is that.
You're trained to do that. Yeah.
Mm.
It
Yeah,
took it took
yeah,
years, 37 years to make that
yeah.
happen. Yeah.
37 years just to see that,
Yeah.
and and then my growth was really getting in touch with that and really starting to see how it works, how it plays out in relationships, how it plays out in dynamics, and how
Mhm.
the fact that we don't feel our feelings, if we're not feeling our feeling, we step straight away into an unhealthy pattern of
Mm,
relationship. And
mm,
those dynamics are created that keep us feeling
mm,
conflict or powerlessness or
mm,
insecure or anxious
Mm.
or whatever it is, that
Mm.
that's what happens because the emotions have not been integrated into our experience.
Yeah. And how did that show up for you in your life, like in relationships? Like even choosing, because I'm all about trying to get people to uh, a state of being able to make conscious decisions in all
Mm,
aspects of their life of your life.
mm,
I just that's kind of my goal. I'd love to people to be able to make conscious, choose conscious partners, eat consciously,
mm.
have, heart-centered conscious business, have those
Yeah,
conscious kind of, creating that conscious culture that can really have a transformative, uh, I suppose, new rebirth for society as such, if everybody
yeah,
kind of was to unlock that, and like,
yeah. How
how did,
beautiful.
yeah, and how did that
Mm.
show up for you, that
In
numbness that,
relationships.
yeah, in
Yeah, yeah,
relationships.
yeah. So what like it's really interesting with the emotional world because I'm not talking about concepts that can fit into a box. So for me, my greatest challenge was being able to explain what I knew to be true into something that people could understand. And because emotions are fluid, it's not like, so, like for example, you study law or medicine, you're actually learning past information and you're just
Mm,
relearning that information and applying it. The emotional world is not like that. It's very fluid and it's always expanding, and our knowledge of it is always growing. So I I'm speaking now, but what I know today will be different to what I know in even 2 days' time, because
yeah,
that's the nature of this beautiful emerging process that is
yeah,
our emotional world. So
yeah.
for me, the way that what I understand is when I was younger, because I couldn't feel my feelings and I wasn't trained and I didn't have any education in being able to embrace and integrate what was happening to me emotionally,
Mhm.
all those things were pushed aside. So there was this part of me that had all these feelings, and then there was me. So
Mm.
there's a gap, right? There's a space between who I'm being
Mm.
and other parts of me. So I never feel
Mm.
whole. So for a
Mm.
start, I always felt like I was searching for something, right? And I didn't
Mm.
know what it was. And it was because there was a part of me that I wasn't owning.
Mm.
But in that gap, there's, because we feel it as a gap, it's like a neediness in us. And like we're trying to
Mm.
always fill it. We're trying to always do something with it. So
Mm.
for me, it was like I was looking outside to get love, because I always felt like there was this
Mm.
not good enough. There was this gap in me. So what I was taught by my culture and by my parents and by the movies I watched was
Mm.
I had to fix that by going
Mm.
outside, by
Yeah.
finding love outside, by finding satisfaction outside,
Mm.
and so everything was interpreted in terms of getting the outside right. Had someone said to me, "Oh, actually, that's just all about that feeling of not good enough and not being quite
Yeah.
whole." If someone had
Yeah.
said that to me, I could have gone to the core of the problem, like when I was
Yeah.
much younger. But no,
20
no,
years
no.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my first relationship, now get this, like, so as a teenager, my dad left when I was 13. And so for me, I was acting out a lot and having these relationships with boys and
Mm.
we were all kids really. And a lot of the
Yeah.
times I walked away from myself and abandoned myself to be accepted and loved. And I
Yeah.
had very, very low self-esteem at 18. And the
Mm.
first boy that showed me real interest, and like by that stage, I was like, oh, I just want to have a long-term partner. I just jumped into a relationship with him.
Yeah.
And, really it was my little girl that wanted to be loved that
Yeah.
hopped into that relationship. There was
Yeah.
no adult decision. There was no
Mm.
conscious choice. I
Yeah.
was just jumping in there to
Mm.
fill that need and that gap and to feel
Yeah.
secure and to feel loved. So and I say all the time, my little girl was in that
Yeah.
relationship, the little
Yeah.
girl in me that just wanted to be loved and held and looked after. And what happens is when you're in the relationship as your inner child, you've got blinkers on, right? You
Yeah.
can't see the red flags.
Of
There's red
course.
flags every freaking where, but you can't see it because
There's
a
Post-its
child.
everywhere. Yeah, there's
That's right,
signposts,
because the
Post-its.
child is so
Yeah.
trusting and so
Yeah.
innocent that
Yeah.
she's just like in there going, this person's going to love me, and
Yeah.
like that's what happens. So for me, that was my first relationship, and we obviously got along well enough to stay together for 18 years and have 3
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
But because I had no emotional awareness, that whole relationship, there was a lot of conflict, walking on eggshells, the on again, off again love thing. If we had conflict, he would withdraw the love. I would feel insecure. I would be in my bedroom crying and trying to sort it out and trying to resolve. And he would go into the silent treatment because he had no way of expressing his emotions. So he would just be silent and not speak to me for weeks. And I would feel even worse. And like, it was really psychological sort of abuse in a way. So
emotional
even
abuse.
though I was, it's psychological abuse. And by the end of the time, here I am, this confident woman that ran a business, that had 3 kids, that did all this shit. On the inside, that dynamic chipped away at my self-esteem and just kept chipping away at my self-esteem. And I just could never feel good enough, could never feel peaceful inside, And so not understanding that emotional, the way my emotions worked, like not understanding just the way they worked really put me at a disadvantage when I chose that relationship and when I raised my kids, because everything they did I took personally and it landed on me as I didn't realize that my reaction was because it was this not good enough, like the gap, because I already felt this gap in me that wasn't quite good enough. I wasn't quite whole. Everything they did activated that. And so I was actually reacting because of that, not because of their behavior. And so I could have solved it all like in a second had I understood my emotional world.
If you had that awareness. That's amazing. That it really is. It just goes to show like how, those dynamics can go on for so many years, decades, of emotional abuse, really, like without you realizing what you were living in, what you were stewing in. You were kind of.
Don't you think it's normal? Like I just thought I sort of sensed there was something better. Like I could sense it. But I just thought that was how everyone did relationships because that's what I saw. All my girlfriends spoke about their relationships like that. And it wasn't until 37 when I really started to understand my emotions and come back home to myself that I went, oh my gosh, there's this completely different way to do relationships. It feels so good and so easy. And like, why wasn't I ever taught?
But I actually think this is why it's cutting edge, because this is a new emergent design in relationships, that we can actually now consciously, when we become aware of ourselves and come to know ourselves in our wholeness, that then we can consciously choose that person as that person actually arrives. You don't even have to go looking for them. They just turn up.
That's right.
That's right. You actually attract them, like a bee, that kind of way. It's just like the bee to the flower kind of thing. It is like so easy when you're in the kind of, you let life design when you let love design your life, I would say, that it kind of it when you're letting go, when you start to kind of move into that emotional education field and get really curious about it, it's not that scary space, and it's amazing. You're so good at explaining that world, though, because I think that's what's difficult is the inner landscape. The inner landscape, I call it, like, in Ireland, they have these beautiful vistas and gorgeous landscapes, and, we're all just in awe of the beauty, but we don't often want to kind of look at our inner landscape and see there's beautiful parts of it, and then there's parts of it that we don't want to look at, and we're very scared, and people are very terrified of their emotions, And what are your what's your kind of viewpoint on when it comes to mental health and how, how that, I suppose, looking away from and not wanting to look into our emotional world can kind of, when it can become chronic and move into mental health issues, Have you seen that with clients of yours, or do you think that's
absolutely. Absolutely. So with my clients, I see how, I can always trace back to an emotional disturbance. And because, and like actually it's quite natural for our body to have trauma, but because we're not taught how to integrate that emotion and process it, it becomes this repetitive pattern. Now, the mind does play a role in the way we're taught to process our emotions. So we have a feeling, and rather than feeling the feeling in our body and letting it process and moving with it and becoming part of this emerging process, we take it into our mind, and our mind then puts a story around it which amplifies the pain like 20,000 fold, and tries to fix it and tries to whatever the mind does with it. So the mind, because that's the mind's job, it's just a computer. It's actually, I always say the heart is the adult, the mind is the child, but we've been taught that the mind is the controller, the parent, right? So the mind takes it, and this becomes this thing, because you can't, we are trying all the time to fix our emotions. We're trying all the time to think about how to fix ourselves. And, like, you can't fix a feeling with a thinking.
Yes.
You can't. And emotional intelligence is not going to help you. Emotional intelligence will give you the awareness of it.
Yeah.
But you still, the integration of my feeling experience is a feeling process, right?
Yes.
And
I love that. That's so good.
Yeah, it's like, and this
amazing.
is why we've had all this information about our emotions, and I see a lot more people are talking about it, and it's great, because that's shows me that at least we're having conversations around it. But hey, the next step is, this is not a mental thing. This is a feeling experience. This is becoming whole. And when you become whole, a lot of the things that are happening mentally for you that you can't cope with, they heal, because it's the separation in yourself. It's the conflict within yourself that projects out or manifests as anxiety, panic, depression, all of these things, and and the terror of looking at the pain. I totally get that, which is why like, okay, so any new experience that you have, it's really normal to be frightened, because you go, I don't know how to do that, right? If you've got to do something new, I don't know how to do that. I'm scared of it. I have a natural sort of like, I'm a bit, I've got to go on and talk, for example. I've never had any problem with it. I just talk wherever and however. You can't shut me up. But, like, you've got to get on stage or whatever. It's like you have this fear. But the thing is, as soon as you sort of look into it and just sort of lean into it a little bit, and somebody gives you, like, we support each other and we start to learn the words and we start to learn the way to do it, you feel like, oh, I could do that, because somebody's actually told me what I have to do with my breath before I get on stage. Someone's taught me what I have to say and how I have to say it. Someone's taught me, so we learn that you've got to be in it to sort of master it or to sort of move into it. But the thing is, you can learn how to do it, and you're not as terrified. If you have this understanding of what to expect, you have an understanding of the words to use and the way to go about it, it's not terrifying, and this thing of, like, I know so many people say to me, I just don't want to feel that, because I feel like if I open the door, I'm never going to come out. And I've absolutely felt that.
Yeah.
I've absolutely felt that. And it's wise to feel that, right? Because if you don't have an emotionally safe space to process and integrate your emotion, that's exactly what can happen. But if you're willing, and you just chip away at little bits until you feel emotionally safe, until you have that support around you, and then be willing, because it's like, Marcus Aurelius said, what's in your way is the way.
Exactly.
And you do have to go through it, and it's not as bad as what you think. When you actually do it, it's never as bad. It's that thing, you always feel like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, and you've got to jump off, and you're freaking out, and so you just like, not literally. I'm not saying literally. No, not literally. I'm saying metaphorically, right?
Metaphorically,
you know that you're doing something new.
You want to do something, but you have to push yourself.
And you're standing there and going, oh my gosh, this is, I've got to push myself, and then you do it, and it's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. What was I like? I did that. Like, what was that like? So,
Yeah. And I think the more you do that, actually, that's a great example, because, like, the way when you do that, it's building a muscle, because then you realize that, number one, you can recognize when that pops up. It's like a fear of moving out of your comfort zone, because you're at a new level. And then you go, oh, there it is again. And I know what to do now. I'll move past it. And the minute you move into it, you step forward into it, it starts to dissolve. And then you realize that was just actually a thought I had in my
Mm.
mind, because my dad used to say, a notion, it's like a
Yeah.
notion that I had that I couldn't do it, or that I couldn't,
Mm.
and the minute then you're in it, you're like, oh, it's just gone, and I've just done something that I never thought I'd be able to do, or
Mm.
move past that
Mm.
fear. But it can take like that, those practices of
Mm.
return to the breath or whatever, or
Mm.
like just giving
It's so
you,
true.
yeah, and then gradually you can kind of even not need those,
Mm.
like they're kind of like crutches for a while,
Mm.
and until you can learn to walk on your
Yeah.
own,
Yeah.
and it does kind of build, that emotional stability within yourself, like, and it kind of, and to start, would you say to start small like that seems like a more, I suppose, sustainable way as well, because like when you're
Mm.
starting small, you're more, and small steps, you're more probably open to moving forward into taking on more challenges, where if you
Mm.
move too quickly, then you might go back, have a
Mm.
regression
Mm.
kind of,
Mm.
um
Yeah, and like I've observed in everyone I've worked with, and even in myself, that it's almost like your emotional world has an intelligence.
mm,
So what happens is what what's ready to be healed, what you're
mm,
ready to integrate and actually bring into your experience and own and accept and heal and actually embody as actually this is, like this is okay. I'm going to just
mm,
really integrate this. When it's
mm,
ready to be healed, it comes up naturally.
yeah,
And so you'll have the same experience, like for example, you might have, I don't know, somebody stands you up one day, somebody stands you up the next day, and you go, oh, why are those people standing me up? There's something that's coming up for me to learn now. So,
yeah,
you have these same experiences. So your emotional world has
yeah,
this intelligence that brings up what needs to be healed when it needs to be healed. And it actually helps you heal it if you go with the flow.
yeah,
Like your
yeah,
body knows what to do, the intelligence knows what to do,
yeah,
and it is just that starting with the awareness, starting to really, like actually I'll mention later, there's a free download on my website, which
brilliant.
explains these 11 life lessons, and
Mhm,
to reflect on these 11 things that
mm,
explain how the emotions work and just start to shift the way you're thinking about emotion a little bit. It's a big
mm,
help.
mhm, mhm. That's amazing, and it's great to have those. Like your book is fantastic, and I've read. Obviously, I'm aware of all the keys that you share with people, and they're amazing tools, because it kind of makes it logical and kind of doable for people. Because in that emotion world like that, it can be very foggy and hard to navigate, And I
Mm,
love when it's made practical and simple like that. So that's at the
mm,
end. It'd be great if you could share that with people where they can
yeah.
download that from. But I'd love to ask, I know with myself in my journey of, I suppose, kind of starting to go into that emotional landscape of realizing the trigger for me was like my health,
Mm,
that was like a telltale sign that things weren't right, was because I was having migraines all the time, and I had irritable bowel syndrome, and it got to the stage where I was barely able to eat anything.
mm,
Like it was like kind of
mm,
getting to the stage where like it was, I just like, what is it? Like the food, and I knew
mm,
like the food wasn't the issue. Like I was able to eat, but there was a lot of the choice and the variety had kind of, and the spice had gone out of
mm,
my palate, because there were so
mm,
many different things that would upset me, that kind of way.
mm,
So I had to keep things really simple and bland and whatever, just to kind of keep the kind of keep things kind of not activated, that kind of way.
mm.
And it was
Yeah.
amazing until then. I had tried many different things, read books, gone to doctors and different things, and until I realized, and I think this is emotional. And
Mm,
again, like you totally had no idea,
mm,
about the emotional world even. And then I start to kind of, I suppose, have that emotional education first, like understanding
mm,
about this could be an emotional thing, and supporting myself with that, and then working through meditation and doing mindfulness and neuroscience
mhm.
studying and practicing, and then it's amazing the relief that can be gotten,
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
to heal ourselves, like the
Mm,
capacity to heal yourself, like you said,
mm,
that if you can just support your body in its healing capacity, I suppose. You know, it's just,
And that's mothering, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
for me, I learned to mother the parts of me that
yeah,
felt lack and
yeah,
felt unloved.
yeah,
And so, and they call it parenting, don't they? Parenting
mm,
yourself, because,
yeah,
you know, emotionally, and
mm,
especially if we're talking about addicts, and I've heard, in the past, I've had partners that I've gone to the rooms with them, Alcoholics Anonymous, you
mm,
probably heard that, and I've sat in
mm,
the rooms with them and I've listened to people, and they
mm,
talk about how with addiction, the moment that you pick up a drink, you stop
mm.
growing emotionally. So if you start
Right.
drinking at 13, you're still at 13-year-old emotionally.
Wow.
So the program is all about, it is an emotional program. It's an emotional growth program,
Mm,
and,
mm,
and I think it's very interesting because it is challenging to understand, like you're saying, but
mm,
it's behind everything.
mm.
Everything. If you like, I joke, if you took me to Western Australia and put me in a room full of 200 miners, I could find something to talk about, because
Yeah,
without doubt, in their reality, I could totally bring it back to emotion, right?
yeah,
Everything is emotion,
yes.
and it's like, we could think about it, emotion, that's something in motion, life in motion, right? So if
Yeah.
we're part of life, we're part of emotion, and we either
Mm,
roll with it or not. And if we
mm,
don't roll with it, we create illness. And it's true that, there's a whole lot of books now written on
mm,
the link between emotion and health. And,
mm,
like, if you're not speaking your truth, you can have a
mm,
sore throat, like
mm.
all those sorts
Yeah,
of things, the connections, because our
yeah,
bodies are these
yeah,
incredible, super intelligent
yeah,
vessels, like,
yeah.
so, and like what you were saying before, your emotion. And I know myself, people that, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Why does this happen?
Mm,
But if
yeah,
you go, well, maybe it is emotion, you sort of go, oh, okay, so I'm holding on to something,
yeah,
I'm holding on to this
yeah,
emotion, or I'm protecting myself, or,
yes, yeah,
I'm healing a trauma, because the body holds the emotion in the body.
yeah,
And,
yes.
I've had some incredible experiences where, in a, just doing some transpersonal workshop,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
I've had a
mhm,
release of emotion, like an experience that I had as a
mm.
child that I'd completely forgotten about, that
Wow.
had been activated and like all this emotion that I
Yeah,
hadn't felt back then. So our body holds that emotion, and where the body's holding the emotion, we can have a weakness, and illness can be created.
yeah,
So it's like,
of course. It's really the key, like, isn't it? And like that, it's funny because
mm,
somebody said about emotional undigested. Like I realized I was holding
mm,
undigested
mm,
emotions in my body. And I was like, oh my god, that's so simple to understand,
yes, yeah,
And it was being made so complicated, like even by just I
mm,
suppose that logical mind of like, I suppose giving other my power away to doctors and different things that I was trying to fix,
yes,
but really just even having that awareness and then I love then what we were talking about the words as medicine tonight. We're talking about mothering. I started to
mm,
mother myself,
yeah,
and the start of the journey of kind of self-care and self-soothing in a
mm,
holistic way, and starting to listen to my body and listen to my emotions and listen to like what felt good and kind of soothing and kind of giving yourself space to be okay with your emotions, be
mm,
comfortable in all those different colors that, they can turn up in these different flavors and, really kind of I'm realizing that they're not they're beautiful, like, that there's a beauty to them, like, that way. That's like what helped me really, like, was kind of like that
oh yeah.
embracing your emotions,
Yeah, and
embracing.
seeing them as
Yeah,
this, like, for me, it was like, wow, actually, my emotions are just trying to show me what I need to do next.
yeah, yeah.
Like, even from things like, I have a phone call and I need to take some action on it. But I wake up the next day and I'm feeling a little bit down, and I don't know why I'm feeling down. And I'm sort of going for
Mm,
a walk and I go, what do I need to understand about this feeling? And I'm just sitting in the feeling, and I was like, oh, actually, that's about that phone call. That there's
mm,
an unresolved emotion around that phone call.
mhm,
So it's manifested as a feeling of feeling a little bit low today. I've woken up and felt a bit down. Now, had I
mm,
not gone into that feeling,
mm.
I wouldn't have known, oh shit, I've got to go back and do something about that.
Yeah,
Okay, so what am I going to do about that? And so then I
yeah,
take action. So it's very practical, right? When you're in your
yes,
emotional world, it's
yeah,
not woo woo. And like, I love spirituality. I love all of that because I think we've got to be whole, right?
yeah,
Everything is a tool for us to use.
yeah.
However, I do notice that it's been part of the New Age movement to use spirituality to escape emotion,
Yes,
or
absolutely. Yeah,
and like to do energy healing, and to move the emotions and the blocks with energy healing, which is great and it works,
mm,
but it works
mm,
permanently when you also do the emotional work,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because we're in a human body. We're in a human
Yeah,
body. We're a feeling being. And we
yes,
can't just do spiritual work. We can't just do head work. We can't just have
yeah,
information. We are a feeling being. So we've got to feel,
yeah,
we've got to be. And when you think about it, when you feel and when you really understand and just go, like, this is normal that I feel. Of course I'm going to feel jealous. Why
mm,
wouldn't I feel jealous? I don't have to act on it,
mm,
right?
mm.
But why wouldn't I feel jealous, or why
Yeah,
wouldn't I feel angry? Like, that's
yeah,
okay that we feel that. And when we get to the point where we can feel everything, and when we're at ease with whatever comes up, we all of us is here in this moment.
mm,
Every part of me is right here in this moment. There's nothing of me that I don't want to see or own or push over there. There's
yeah,
nothing, everything, every single part of me is here in this moment. And I am so powerful. And that, for me, that's enlightenment in this moment.
yeah,
It's not like you've got to be enlightened somewhere else. Right
yeah,
now, in this moment, I feel like that because all of me is here.
yeah. But that's what getting to enlightenment is about, that being present in all the aspects of yourself, that you're
Mm.
pulling everything into that alignment, into your
Yes.
truth,
Yeah.
and it is unblocking that flow of energy, it's unlocking it. And what I actually think is so vitally important is that, you know, moving in then to when you do that emotional work and you've freed up your body to start to feel, then
Mm.
the creative force is much more able to use you and to direct you through intuition.
Yeah.
Did you find that? You know what I mean?
Yes,
That it
absolutely.
becomes
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
stronger,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
so true. And I used to describe it as, because I was more in tune with my feeling and more allowing of it, I felt more. So when I met people, I could feel them, and I could feel if they were lying to me. Like, I could
Yes.
feel what was
Yeah.
going on, and I could feel my word. I could feel trees.
Yeah.
I could feel more
Yeah.
because all of a sudden
Yeah.
I was feeling, I
Yes.
was actually
You're
in touch with
actually
my
feeling,
feeling.
fully
Yeah.
feeling the
Yeah. And
being
you're not
alive, you
yeah,
know?
that's true. And that's, you're part of this process of being alive.
Mm,
And you're not always, I say enlightenment in the moment because it is in
mm,
the moment, because in the next
mm.
moment, I might not feel like that. In the next moment,
Yeah.
I might have some emotion that comes up, and I might like, okay,
Yeah.
we're doing this now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, that's what being alive is about. And so I was just reading one of the comments there. When you hear the words spirituality and emotions, how do they connect with your life? So, for those that do not know about spirituality and emotions.
Mm,
So that's an interesting question. So
mm,
let's, and I hope I'm interpreting this right. So
mm,
we might just sort of segue a little bit into that. So for me, life is emotion. Life is a feeling experience.
mhm.
And if I can get in touch with that emotion, because what happens is we have experiences that are painful or that hurt or that are traumatic. And because we don't have the emotional safe space around us, um, we can't process that emotion. We can't, it's too much, even as a
Mm,
child, it's too much for us to integrate that.
mm,
Even if we did have the safe space, sometimes as a child, we just can't integrate that. So
mm,
that feeling, that emotion gets sort of stuck in our body. And that
mm,
is something that we need at some point to heal and to start to integrate into all of our experience.
mm, mhm.
And spirituality to me is the part of me that's unseen.
Mm,
So, and really, emotions probably are a link between my
mm,
physical body and what I'm experiencing in this life,
mm,
and my spiritual or my unseen self, which
mm,
is perhaps a higher part of me that's sort of knowing, that's
mm,
connected to all things, that
mm,
has an intelligence about it that
mm,
can guide me if I allow it. And
mm,
spirituality can be a lot of things to a lot of different people, but for
mm,
me, it's just it's an unseen part of me that sort of has a higher experience of
mm,
life and what happens to me, and it can be a guide. It can be called all sorts of things,
mm,
and I feel that the spirituality is something it's very pure,
mm,
um, and it's definitely something that's in me but also all
mm,
around me. So, and that's an important part to embrace too. Like, we often
mm.
have ideas of spirituality that stop us from really living a full human life,
Mm,
you know,
mhm, mhm.
and they create limitations and blocks, and I can't do that because of that. And, so spirituality can be another journey that people go on to really learn about themselves and get whole within
It's
themselves.
it's funny actually because I feel that actually we're kind of moving into this upgrade in humanity, like as a species,
Yeah,
and that it's an evolution. So
I
the
think
the
so.
way I, the way I see it being integrated is that like when we move like from our mind into our body, um, then we start to do our work in the body through those practices, like those spirituality practices, meditation, and things that's actually unlocking our body and defrosting those areas that have been
Mm,
traumatized, whatever, which is actually opening us up to the emotional world and the
yeah.
sensing world, and that brings in the ability, like I said, for the intuition to work in the body the way the body was actually
Yes.
originally designed to be,
Yeah.
so like the spirituality, I call it like the essence. So it's like your essence identity. So
Mm,
like, I suppose if everything is one and we're all one whole system, like as not just ourselves as being whole, but the whole of life as being like that solitaire diamond,
mm,
and we're all different facets of that to be able to be a sensing being, we need to do that emotional work. And then the perception, the ability for us to be able to perceive on higher levels enters into our capacity as humans then, So like
mm.
when you sit with people, then you have this much higher kind of consciousness because it is your awareness, consciousness about awareness, conscious awareness of the people you're around, the actual the material world. Everything has a consciousness. So how you relate to what appears within your world always has an energetic field. So when you have your
Mm,
emotions, are like the instruments of
yeah,
the consciousness, so that when you can sit with somebody and you can feel their essence identity, and it gives you so much information that's gone way beyond the mind.
yeah,
It cuts
yeah.
from it's higher intelligence then, because you're getting vast amount of information in an
Mm,
instant
yeah,
that it totally bypasses the mind.
yeah.
It's actually your
That's
whole
so true.
body becomes like that transpersonal
That's right.
communication.
Mm,
So your whole body is actually feeling and sensing and experiencing another
mm.
human, that kind of way. So there's
Yeah.
actually a
You're in the
transmission.
experience. You're
Yeah,
fully in the experience. And that,
yeah.
it's interesting because it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? Is
Mm,
it the emotional world or the spiritual world or
yeah,
but actually there's this integration. So my spirituality can help me unlock my emotions, but my emotions can also help me unlock my spirituality. And my
yeah,
emotions, like what I've discovered is um I the more shut down I was emotionally, like the more I had not looked at my emotions, the more I had like these veils in front of my experience. So when
mm,
I'm in an experience with the other person, I can't really experience them because
yeah,
I have all this emotion trapped inside my body that's really influencing my perception of this moment.
yes,
So if I'm judgmental, for example,
yeah,
because of my own emotional stuff that I haven't dealt
mm,
with, my own pain, if I'm judging someone, that's a
mm,
substitute for experience. I'm
yeah,
not experiencing who they really are. I'm not experiencing who I really am
Yeah.
because I'm in judgment. So
Yeah.
the emotions that I haven't dealt with act like a
Mm.
barrier in
Barrier.
between
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
and my life
Yeah.
and the people around me,
Yeah.
and my spirituality.
Yeah.
So, like it's so
Yeah.
interesting because it
It's
is
like
all interconnected.
it sounds like an armor nearly, somebody who's in
Mm,
battle and like a warrior with the steel armor all around,
yep.
so it's like an armory then, so your sensing ability is reduced so much. But like what's amazing to think that if, the more that people do the kind of work and on that releasing, and then the higher the consciousness, the healing presence that somebody can have when they're sitting with somebody, you can actually have kind of a healing effect on another person. If your
Mm,
nervous system is in a really highly functioning way and your body is actually kind of emanating, in a
mm.
very healthy way, then you can kind of that kind of has a
It's
relationship with someone
healing.
else.
Yeah,
It's healing for
it's
somebody
true.
else,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like it's just it's I think humans kind of coming into their the kind of, I suppose, like a dormancy nearly, like that the
Mm,
potential was
yeah.
dormant, in
Yes,
us.
I
And it's
agree.
about
Yeah.
where coming into our full potential then is when we
Yeah.
work on all the aspects of our
Mm,
humanity,
yeah.
and it actually just is us coming into our full potential,
Mm,
how we were
mm.
designed to be,
Yes, I think
Yeah.
so. And that presence of,
Yeah.
like I don't think it. You can sort of sometimes hear that as being something special that you have to achieve, that come into that
Mm,
presence. But really, you know, everybody can be present in this moment if we
mm,
just come into, like, for me, it's like just being aware of my heart and
mm,
just, having this awareness of my heart while I'm in this moment, and not
mm.
trying to fix people, not trying to figure
Yes.
things out, just allowing this moment to be and actually being present. And we can all do, there is so much healing in that place. And you know, everybody can do that right here and now,
Mm,
and in that presence, it's healing for us as well as the people that we're with,
mm. And the presence
and
itself, the actual energy that comes from the presence is the healing.
mm,
It's like a transmission. It's like once you become into presence, it's like a healing force that starts to do the work for you. So
mm,
really it's so simple. It's
yeah,
just
it is.
practice presence.
And you're always given
Yeah,
what you like. It's you always know.
yeah.
Like, for me, there have been times. See, and I think we have this real. I don't think it's right, the power dynamic we have at the moment with certain. Well, in the world, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right that we go to psychologists and therapists and stuff, and we hand our power over. We
Mm,
go, here we go. I can't do this. I'm useless.
mm,
I'm broken. I'm broken, right? I'm
mm,
broken. Can you fix me? We hand our power over.
mm,
I think it would be much healthier for us not to be considered broken or be treated as broken.
mm.
And when we go to these people, we're supported actually. Like,
Mm.
we need support. Sometimes you do need to reach out to
Oh,
somebody to help.
absolutely. Yeah.
But when we go to them and we hand them our power for healing, and we
Mm,
think that we're broken, we're giving
mm,
away our power. And what happens is not a lot, but some therapists will actually use that power, and they
mm,
profit from it, right? They profit
mm,
from keeping you coming back and back and back and back and back.
mm,
They're not really healing you, and
mm,
the power dynamic is unhealthy. And it's
mm,
the same with gurus. There's a lot of
mm. Oh,
gurus that you've heard
absolutely.
of,
Yeah.
that they
Oh,
sit
yeah.
on a stage, right?
Yes.
And they might
Yeah.
be telling you some great information, but the
Mm,
people listening, they're giving them the power. They're giving them this, like, you're better than me because you're an
mm,
expert, and I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to follow everything. I'm going to read that book, and I'm going to follow it because they're the
mm.
expert. No, actually, you're the expert in your own life.
Yes. You're
Right?
your
You are
own
the
guru.
expert in your own
You're the
life.
guru.
Feel it.
Yeah.
That's right. Feel it. And if it feels right, by all means, take
Yeah.
the information, read the book, apply it,
Yeah.
but listen to yourself first. And that,
Yeah.
for me, that is emotional. The more we come to know ourselves emotionally, the more we trust ourselves. And the more we
Yes.
trust ourselves, we know who to trust on the outside.
Yes.
At the moment, we don't know who to trust. At the moment,
Yes.
we're trusting people that we should not be trusting, right?
That's true.
We are
Yeah.
trusting corporations we should not be trusting. But
Yes.
because we don't trust ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not in tune with our emotions, and it's
Mm.
that
Yeah.
it's just, this
It's
is true. This is the
mm,
evolution of where we are now.
yeah.
It is an evolution, and it's like we're all in it together, and it's super exciting,
It
and we're
is.
learning skills and learning, you know, to use all the tools. We've got some great tools, all these mindset tools and the spiritual tools, and we are so clever. We've got everything there.
Yeah.
You know, what we need to do now is use it.
We're waking up to it, you know.
Yeah.
It's we're waking up to it, to the integration process, you know. And I think like even Mental Health Warriors, like even since September, I think there's been a lot more shows about that, like, you know, integrating, like, you know, the holistic, you know, the healing arts, and talking about emotion, talking about what's underneath. And we've lots of other programs coming forward, you know, that's starting to kind of go underneath what the mental health issues, you know, and talking about preventative kind of solutions as well for people that, you know, can kind of stop chronic mental health issues that I suppose when something starts off as like bypassing our emotions, it can move into a mental health issue, can move into a chronic mental health issue, because it becomes ingrained in the brain, and it takes an awful lot of work then to come back from that, or you're just actually using medication and you have to, because it's so ingrained in our way, or you know, we haven't had the proper support around those areas, you know. So it's amazing, and your work is fabulous, Lisa. And I know myself and yourself, we've had an amazing connection through the Mental Health Warriors, and we've started a new initiative from, you know, the connection that we made through an interview that I had with the Business of Smiles, and then I got in we connected through that, and so we want to talk to people about our new initiative that we're bringing about, the Diamond Mothering. That's been, so we started that, launched that a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
It was a couple of weeks. It's been an amazing journey, like this incredible roller coaster of yes, let's do this. It's great.
Yeah, so we've been looking together into the dynamic around the specific kind of dynamic of the mother-daughter relationship, and I know you have a free gift that you'd like to share with people.
So not only is there's a mini book download for it, which is 11 essential education lessons that you may never have been taught at school. So if you go to my website, you can download that. There's also a free webinar series. So beautiful Carolyn and I are doing a free 3-part series talking about uncovering the feminine force and actually stepping back into that power. And we've just done the first webinar, and we're giving that away for free. So there's we'll put a link in here to the access page so that you can go and access that first webinar and watch the discussion of, like, especially as a parent, how we're going to deal with 21st century challenges, because there's a lot of challenges out there if you're a parent, and even as a person, you know, but as a parent, it's sort of amplified. So we're talking about that, talking about how you can find this emotional power that you need to start dealing with it, and also giving you some keys that you can really apply to your life right now. So that's going to be in the link that Carolyn shares later, and you can go and access those as well.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on and for sharing your in-depth knowledge around emotional education. It's just been absolutely amazing. And Adam's been on making lots of comments there, and Robert's just joined us. Yeah, so it's fantastic to have your company, guys, and we're going to be having Lisa on again next week. We're looking at the emotions underneath addiction next Friday, actually. So tune in again for that. And I think the next show is housekeeping. I'm not sure. I think it's Monday with the coffee morning. So we have a full packed week of shows next week. We've got 4, I think, every day. And so stay tuned for that. And it's been a real pleasure sitting with you again, Lisa. And I'm never tired of listening to your wealth of knowledge and wisdom.
It's just seem to run out of things to talk about, do we?
Never do. Never. There's always something new that arrives.
Yes, so true.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
thanks for having me, Carolyn. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, everybody. So wonderful to have your company here with us, and everybody listen back to the playback as well. And you know, keep listening and watching. There's wealth of information and value for everyone here on the Mental Health Warriors. In each show brings something new. There's plenty of variety. Okay, thank you so much, Lisa, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everyone. Bye.